Hi folks, Ben here from Lancasters, and this is a short video on buy-to-let property investment advice. Now obviously property investment can take many different shapes and forms in as far as commercial property, development, different kinds of investments, but the most common by far that we deal with here are buy-to-lets, and that's what I'll focus on for the purpose of today. Okay, it will be rather brief, whistle stop, because it's a big subject as you can imagine. So first of all, let's cover off the freehold versus leasehold subject. Tenure, effectively. For those of you who aren't sure the difference, I've done a separate video explaining that, but assuming you do, this is where we see some landlords come unstuck, where they think that the leasehold costs associated with it are a loss, or a lost cost, a sunk cost, and steer towards freeholds, but there's actually nothing wrong with leasehold investment properties, so long as it's the right leasehold. I own leasehold investment properties myself, nothing wrong with them as long as they are a correct lease. I'll cover off some of the points here. So first of all, your budget or the location you're looking to purchase in might determine whether you're buying a freehold or a leasehold property. If you have, if you are looking to buy a rental property in the centre of London, for example, there might only be leasehold flats available, so therefore you are buying a leasehold property. You may be looking in a certain area where there are only houses available, and therefore you are buying a freehold house. Your budget might constrain you on what you can or can't do. So the decision might be made for you. But assuming that you are then looking at a leasehold, we'll look at some factors that determine whether it's a good or a bad lease from a buy-to-let rental perspective. Okay, so first of all, I always look for a lease of at least 85 years plus. That means that it can be mortgaged or remortgaged in the future if you need to. Also won't become a problem if you're then selling it on. I always go for a guide of aim for 100 years plus. But 85 years really is a minimum, makes it easy to be able to pass on in the future should you ever wish to exit the market. And then we look at things like service charge and ground rents. Now, a well-run service charge and a reasonable ground rent should never deter you from purchasing it as a rental property, because they are only going towards future maintenance items that you would be paying for in a freehold yourself anyway. So there are obviously limits to that. And you don't want to be paying thousands of pounds a year on service charges. It will eat away at your returns. So as a guide, I always work on a maximum of 1.5 months rent equivalent. So if you are going to be renting a property for say £1,000 a month, you don't want to have a service charge of any more than £1,500 a year. Okay, give you an idea, 1.5 months rent per year as a maximum. Likewise, you should ring alarm bells if your service charge is too cheap. If your service charge is 50 quid a year, what's it not paying for? That's not right. You're not getting your buildings insurance covered. You're not have any kind of sink fund for future external maintenance. It's certainly not being cleaned or looked after properly. That should ring alarm bells. So somewhere usually as a guide between 1 and 1.5 months rent is what I aim for personally. Okay. Then we look at management company. Who's managing that service charge and how's it being looked after? I tend to avoid small scale management companies. It's ones that are run by Doris downstairs in flat 1. The problem is what happens the month Doris doesn't fancy doing it, or Doris sadly pegs it, and who's going to do it now? It becomes difficult. I like a professionally run management company. There are plenty of good companies around. One that's just run by one of those is good. Residents associations, they're often a sign of a well-run and cared for building. The people that live there or own there genuinely care about it. You don't have to take part in it, but knowing it's there is a nice thing. And then we also look at things like the reserve fund. There's no point buying into a building that's going to need a new roof in 3 years' time, but there's only 20 quid in the pot, so who's going to be paying for that? Okay, they are standard LPE1 questions that come across with conveyancing, and your agent selling the property, if they've done the homework, will know the answers to all those questions. We will know them from every property that we are selling. All right, so freehold versus leasehold, there you are. Now, what kind of property should you buy? Size matters. Jokes aside, it really does when it comes to lettings. There are 2-bedroom flats and 2-bedroom flats, right, in size, and they make a real big difference to longevity of a tenancy. Your tenants won't stay long term if your place is too small. It just makes day-to-day life too difficult. Where am I going to put the ironing board? I've got nowhere to store my bicycle. Basic stuff of day-to-day life will mean that they will bounce out your property every 6 or 12 months as opposed to staying there for 5 or 10 years and giving you a nice stable return. So what's big and what's not, what's average and everything else. There's a little bit of a guide for you, a bit of a takeaway. 1 bedroom flats, I always aim for 45 square meters and up. 2 bedroom flats, 55 square meters and up. 2 bedroom houses, 65 square meters and up. And 3 bedroom houses, 80 square meters and up. You can keep going on those. 4 bedroom houses being 95 square meters and up, and you can work it out from there. This is what I always use as a minimum size. There are plenty of 1 bedroom flats out there that are 35 or 40 square meters, but you know, they are tiny and tenants don't stay. They feel like small hotel rooms. They've got nowhere for their stuff. Okay, likewise, you don't want to go too large, otherwise you're paying for square footage that you're not getting a return on. Head versus heart. This is a massive subject and where we see most new landlords fall down. People sit at home thinking they are making a decision, you know, commercially with their head, but actually, if you've never bought as a landlord before, you've never really understood buying, you know, just with your, you know, majoritively with your head. And as a division, I would say that I always buy a commercial, commercial proposition, a buy-to-let property, about 80-20. All right, should be looking at about 80% with your head, 20% with your heart. You can never go all one way or the other, and certainly it's not a 50-50 deal. So when I'm looking with my head, I get my shortlist together, I go through what my entry cost is, I add up any works that I'm going to need to do to the property to get it to the standard that I'm happy to let it in, and lump those two together, and then look at the likely rental returns, which I'll cover off with you in a second, likely rental returns from any income from that, and with those two numbers I can work out what my yield is, and if I've got any preference on tenure at the time, that's also a factor in my decision. Okay, and that will give me my shortlist of properties that I will want to go and see and consider. Once I've got those, I will then consider just a couple of basic things which are more an emotional decision, and a great little acid test is, would I live there? Now, I'm married, I've got children and a dog. Obviously I'm not physically going to go and live in a 1 bedroom flat. It's just not going to work for my lifestyle. But you put yourself in the mindset that if I were going to go and live in a 1 bedroom flat, would I live in this one? If I've got a son or a daughter or a friend who need a 1 bedroom flat or a 2 bedroom flat or a 2 bedroom house, whatever it may be that you're looking at, would that be an option that you'd be happy for them to have? Okay, so that's a great little acid test, because you know, you've got to try and assess whether it is viable from that point of view and desirable from that point of view. It's an emotional thing. I then look at common areas, so that is hallways, outside spaces, where the bin stores are. Is it clean? Is it tidy? Is it well looked after? If the railings outside are covered with old bicycle wheels from where bikes have been stolen before, probably not a great area. If you're having to step over a burnt out sofa on the landing, doesn't matter how nice the flat is, good tenants aren't going to want to live there. So common areas are really important, and again, location. You know, be looking in the right location for the right kind of target market. You know, think about who your ideal tenant is, and then think about what kind of locations they would be looking to live in. All right, we can talk you through those as individual options as well. What will you get in? Well, you could look at every property on Rightmove or Zoopla and then phone the agent and ask them how much that one would rent for each time, but that's a really laborious process and the agent will hate you for it. So here's a bit of a guide. Average rents. Now, I will stress that this is recorded in April 2021. It will change month to month, year to year, but this is a current sort of guide as to what the average rents are being achieved. There are plenty above and below this sort of level, but this is an average. Okay, so 1 bedroom flats between 600 and 750 per month, 2 bedroom flats between 700 and 850 per month, 2 bedroom houses between 800 and £1,000 a month, 3 bedroom houses between 950 and 1250 per month, 4 bedroom houses 1200 up. Okay, now there are plenty of exceptions to those rules. As I said, I've got plenty of houses that, you know, I've got a 3 bedroom flat being rented at £2,500 a month just down the road. But these are the averages. These are the good average guide, okay? If you have a 2-bedroom house and you are renting it out for £700 a month, chances are you're at least £100, maybe £200 a month shy of what the market rent is. Fine if you want to keep it at that level, but bear in mind you are effectively giving your tenant £1,200, £2,400 a year, effectively cashing their Christmas card off on their rent. Okay, if you want to do that out of choice, your decision, but that's what the current going rates are. Now, I touched on it briefly earlier about yields. What should you be aiming for? What's the target there? So when I'm looking at properties to rent, I'm always looking for flats to have a yield of at least 5.5% to 6.5%, and houses to have a yield of at least 5 or 6%. Slightly higher for flats because of the leasehold ground rent scenario that's just factored in that. Keep it simple. They're your kind of targets. Okay. Now we all have here in the office is these little guides which has got house prices along the top, monthly income down the side, and a really simple traffic light system as to whether it's good, bad or indifferent. I don't have a sexy slide with that on it, but email me, drop us a line, I will send you it. That's no problem at all. And if you're not sure how to work out yield, it is a simple equation, which is your yearly income divided by the property value times it by 100. Okay, bit of impromptu maths here. So your yearly income, so if your property is rented for £750 per month, times that by 12, that's £9,000 a year. So your 9,000 will go in that number there. If your property is say worth 150,000, that number will go there. The 9,000 divided by 150 times it by 100 is 6%. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's right. So that means £750 a month, £9,000 a year, divided by £150,000 capital value would give, times it by 100 would give you a 6% return. That would make it a good investment to buy. Okay, as an example, but you can work that out for any you like. So as a real headline, be guided by yield. Yield is super important. You do not want to be buying a lovely little house with roses around the door as a rental property that's only giving you 2.5% yield. There's no point. That's a house to live in, that's not a house to rent out. Locations, again, that will kind of coupled in with yield there. There are locations where you can spend less capital but get the same monthly rental returns in. Okay, they're the kind of areas you want to be looking for your rental proposition. And maintenance. Maintenance is a sort of secret drain on profits. You've got to do it. There is no getting away from you. If you want to have nice tenants, you need to have nice properties. They need to be well maintained. So choose a property which is easy to maintain, which is either in very good order when you take it on, and will have items about it which are of quality and will last throughout the tenancy as well. So there you go. That's my sort of headline tips on that. So I'm Ben from Lancasters. Office number, that's my personal mobile and my personal email. Any questions on any of that stuff, drop me a line. I know it's rather whistle stop. It's a massive subject. I could have talked all day on it, but investment advice from us here at Lancasters. Take care. Almost forgot. For more property related gold, follow the stag, hit the subscribe button below.